Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's great to be here with you all this morning. Wanted to thank Lootful for helping us organize today's webinar. Also want to thank you all for joining our session where we'll be discussing behavioral science to help students complete goals. My name is Serena Fombley Crane. I'm going to be kicking things off for us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few things. This session is being recorded for you to access in the future. We'll be following up after today's session with a copy of it for you. And we also would like to hear from you all today. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send it in using the chat function. We are going to be asking you a few times today to share your thoughts with us using a tool named VBox. It's a website that allows us to poll and for you to interact with us. And so we ask that you keep your phone available so it's easy to pull out when we reference it. If you don't have your phone with you, you can also access VBox on your computer by typing it into the URL and then entering the ID number when prompted. And so that is how we are going to start our session off today, hearing from you guys. If you could go to vbox.app, enter the ID number on your screen. And what we'd love to hear from you this morning before we get started is, what is your biggest goal for the summer?
Yes. Let me look around.
Great. So I know one of my big goals, I don't know if it's my biggest goal, but one of my big goals is tackling my garage, which is just terrible. It's a nightmare. It's embarrassing every time I open it up. I'm nervous that neighbors are going to see it. So that's one of my big goals. So learning to swim, that's a great one. Surviving the rent-own house, yes, that is a big one. Travel, enjoying the sun, gardening, getting Taylor Swift tickets somehow. Ross, I feel like that's from you. Good luck. Recharging. Professional goals to plan all fall programming to have a stress-free semester. My personal goal is completing my ever-growing to-be read book pile. Good luck with that. I feel like my pile is also growing, so great to hear. Well, these are all great to read. Thank you, everybody, for sharing with us. As I mentioned before, a topic we're going to be discussing today is helping students complete their goals. So I thought it'd be nice to open up with just hearing from you all and learning what your goals are for the summer. I am the Senior Manager of Partner Success at Persistence Plus, and I'm going to be facilitating today's session with my colleague, Dr. Rossi O'Hara, who is our Director of Behavioral Science and Education. So let's start with an overview of what we'll be covering today. We are going to begin with a brief introduction as to who we are at Persistence Plus and our partnership with QCC supporting students through Quinn. We'll then jump into our lesson where Ross will walk us through the ABCs of effective plan making. And we're going to be wrapping up our time today with a breakout group where we can practice how to apply the ABCs and the work that you do on a daily basis with the students that you support. We do have a few objectives for you today. By the end of our session, our goal is that you will understand how QCC is collaborating with Persistence Plus to reshape student support with behavioral science, be able to articulate evidence behind the ABCs of plan making, and apply the ABCs of plan making to help students follow through on summer goals. Let's share a little bit about us at Persistence Plus. At different points during their enrollment, we know that students may encounter setbacks or difficulties that can impact their progress. They may feel like everyone else has it figured out but them. Maybe they're afraid to ask for help when they need it. And I see somebody asked, what is QCC, please? Quinsigamond Community College. And that is the partner in Massachusetts that we work with, and we're going to be talking about our work with them today. And so we know that If students are afraid to help, they're feeling highly anxious or demotivated, it may lead them to disconnect from their institution. And so since 2012, we've been working to support students through our student success model that leverages behavioral nudging as an intervention. So working with this idea that the right message at the right time can motivate students to make decisions that will lead them to be successful. So we're proactively connecting with students 2 to 3 times a week to develop mindsets to help them deal with academic setbacks and external obstacles, organize their time and responsibilities, engage with their peer network and campus resources for help, all while they're making progress towards their short and their long-term goals. And so we have a team of social psychologists, and Ross is one of them, who crafts our interventions and develops them into these nudges that are rooted in peer-reviewed research, and they're delivered to students on their phone as text messages. So this is not an app that they have to download. They don't need to learn a new program to receive this type of information. And the platform that we use is scalable and it's intelligent. It's facilitating these conversations to students by responding to them in real time. And we can target these interventions and personalize them based on students' characteristics or how they're responding to our messages. And so we have an example of this on the screen right now, where our platform is having a conversation with a student who shared with us previously that they're a parent. We know through research and our own anecdotes working with students that student parents have specific challenges with balancing their familial responsibilities and their work. They can struggle with guilt around the amount of time they're spending on their courses that's taking them away from their children and their family. And so this exercise is seeking to combat that guilt by asking them to reflect on how their college degree will ultimately benefit their children. And since we learned that this really resonates with the student, our platform will also follow up with them through the academic year to learn more about their experience as a student parent. And as we've supported tens of thousands of students over the past decade, we've also been able to evaluate our impact on their success through over 10 gold standard RCTs. And through these experiments, we found that persistence plus nudges do work to help students persist and complete their credentials. We've had papers that have been published in several peer-reviewed journals like AERA and the Journal for Post-Secondary Student Success. And some highlights we found over the years are that there is a reduction in terms of ethnic and racial equity gaps for students, a 7 percentage point increase in re-enrollment rates for community college students. And in one of our RCTs, we found a 5-time return on investment for the institution. This example comes from an RCT that was conducted at Triton College in Illinois. Within this partnership, our work was led by Kevin Lee, who some of you may know is now working at Quinsigamond Community College. And we found great success in terms of both ROI and student persistence. And so when Kevin began his role at QCC, he brought us along with him to help support their development of their Student Success Scholars or their Success Scholars program. And we've been working to support these students since spring of 2022. We thought it'd be helpful to frame our work supporting success scholars at QCC. We worked with Kevin and his team to align our nudges to their goals for how best to support Quinsigamond Community College students since spring of last year. And we at Persistence Plus have sent over 100,000 nudges to students so far. As I mentioned before, these nudges are delivered to students as text messages on their phone so that they can respond back and engage in conversation with us. Students were introduced to our service as Quinn, just a cute name as that's short for my QCC study buddy. 82% of students that we've served have remained subscribed to our messages. So on top of delivering interventions to students, we're connecting them back to valuable resources at QCC and sharing important campus information with them. We've also found that Quinn has been successful at reaching students who are typically the hardest to reach. 29% of the students who hadn't responded to previous outreach from their advisor connected with Quinn. So we know that these nudges can help students who are previously disengaged remain connected to their institution at times when it's hard to reach them. And in addition to learning about student goals and challenges, we also aim to continue refining our support and, find value in learning about students' experience receiving these nudges from us. And so we asked students during the semester to share what they like about this type of support. 91% of students said that they would recommend this service to other students at QCC. And so you see a nudge example on your screen from Quinn, where she's walking a student through an implementation intentions exercise. And so helping students think through all the components of making a plan and how they can set a goal to complete that plan. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about this today. And going into our partnership with QCC, we understood that leveraging behavioral science would be a key component of supporting students within this Success Scholars program. And so we combined students receiving direct support from our platform with a professional development series for success advisors. With the goal of our professional development series was to teach advisors the science behind Quinn and how they could use these techniques in their daily interactions advising students. And so within this 5-part series, we explain the foundation of help seeking and interventions advisors can leverage to encourage students to seek help. And so for today's focus, we'll be sharing one piece of this series with you all. As it's now summer, we know that colleges are thinking through how to keep students connected and engaged, as well as some of the common challenges that typically come up at this time as students are preparing to matriculate or re-enroll for the next semester. And so we thought it'd be timely to discuss how to get students to ask for help. But before we jump into today's lesson, I thought it'd be helpful to hear from Janine at QCC to share a little bit about how her team has been able to apply some of our strategies in behavioral science to their work.
Oh, wow. So Serena mentioned, I'm Janine Bradley. I work at Quinsigamond Community College. I think a lot of you know me. I'm the assistant director of advising, and I also work with our Success Scholars program. So I just wanted to also kind of like highlight something Serena said. This is my favorite statistic, that 29% of students who are not engaging with us are engaging with Quinn. And so, you know, at QCC, we have an opt-out model. So that means that, you know, we have students in our program who sometimes don't even know they're in our program. And so by sending them text messages through Quinn, it really helps to give that extra layer. And even if they're not responding to an advisor, a lot of times they are responding to Quinn, which is huge. And we found that, you know, sending out those automated text messages can be really helpful to kind of nudge students to what we want them to do, especially at QCC, where we don't have any other texting platforms that we're using. We're hopefully getting EAB Navigate soon, but before that, until that time, you know, Persistence Plus and our work with Quinn is really one of the best ways we're able to, you know, kind of lead students towards behaviors that we know will help them to be successful. So, you know, after going through this professional development series, which was really helpful, a lot of times I end up thinking about this in relation to our work with students who are facing academic jeopardy, who are on academic probation, or like right now it's on my mind because we're working with students who have been dismissed from the college and who might want to come back. So a lot of times I think of this in terms of, you know, some of these are things that we know and we're probably already doing as advisors, but like, how do we help to root our conversations in best practices and in, you know, peer-reviewed research that we know is working? So like, it always happens where a student comes in and they're like, oh yeah, like, you know, last semester was hard, but next semester is going to be better and everything's going to be all set. You know, I have what I need, I'm good to go. And like, we know as advisors that like, we need to dig into that a little bit, because just saying it's going to be better doesn't mean that it will. You know, like, what are the specifics? Like, what's going to be different? How are you going to, you know, make your situation different so that it will support you in your goals? And so when I think of like the ABCs of plan making, like I really try to incorporate like some of these principles into conversations with students on probation, but specifically coming back from dismissal. So I think, and you know, Ross is going to get into all of this, but like talking really specifically with them of like, what challenges or obstacles do you anticipate are going to get in your way, and then how can we make a contingency plan, I think is huge. Because, you know, despite our best efforts, some students don't come back and see us again. We want them to, we invite them to, we sometimes try to strong arm them to come back and see us, you know, once the semester has started. But if we only see them during the summer, how can we set them up with as many tools as possible so that they're ready to tackle that semester, even if, despite our best efforts, they don't come back and see us when they, hit a wall. So that's something that I've tried to kind of incorporate with my students, like thinking about, okay, like last semester you struggled because whenever work called you, you showed up. Do you need to do that next semester? And if that does happen, like, how are you going to handle that? Like, is it a people pleaser thing? Like, can you say no to your manager? Like, how is that going to look? So that we can kind of coach students through, how to handle their challenges before they come up. So that hopefully that will lead to different outcomes for them within the semester. So that's kind of like the direction that we've kind of gone with it. To be perfectly honest though, with any kind of new skill, it's definitely a journey. And I think there's, more ways that we can incorporate some of this into our practice. One of my professional goals, I wrote about my personal goal, but one of my professional goals is to actually we at QCC right now, we don't have like a formalized program for students on probation or who are coming back from dismissal. And what I would like to do is actually institute some sort of program that incorporates some of these best practices to help support students. That's a little bit of us and what we're doing at QCC, but hopefully it will also make more sense once Ross takes us through it a bit more. So thanks for letting me talk, guys.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you for sharing that with the group. Thank you as well to you and Dana and Amy and Kevin for all your leadership, bringing that professional development series to your success scholars and helping us, make sure it was landing in the right way as far as what you're all working on, what challenges you're seeing with students. And we're just so excited to hear how it is being applied and continue to be applied in your work. So Janine has done a great job setting the stage for the big thing we want to talk to you about today, which is this concept of the ABCs of effective plan making. When students have these plans, as Janine spoke to, how do we make sure they approach them in a way that's going to maximize the likelihood that they follow through and complete their goals instead of just saying like, oh, I'm going to do that thing sometime in the future. So to get this conversation started and get us thinking of some examples of these types of goals, I want us to turn us back to VVox. If it's timed out on your phone or computer, you can always put the ID back in order to answer the next question. What I want to hear from you with your students, whether they're current students or the prospective students you hope will matriculate this fall, what are their goals for the summer? What do they need to accomplish? Academically speaking, in order to be set up for fall? What are the goals you want them to have, perhaps? And you can answer this question as many times as you want. And your students have lots of goals, and you can give us lots of answers. Okay, let's see, we have financial aid, going through the registration process, taking their math assessment, or I suppose any other assessments. Saving money, they got to work, they got to earn money. Learning new technology. The goal, come back to school. Learning time management, that's really good, really important for college success. Any other goals people think of that they want their students accomplishing this summer? Oh, got one more. Self-care. That's awesome. Yeah. We definitely, I think all of us, students included, need more of that. Okay, well, this is a good list. And no, one more came in, retake a class. Oh, some more. Register. Okay, and so looking at this, I wanted to pull from here an example that we can talk through. Obviously, this is going to look a little bit different at different institutions, perhaps. But since going through the registration process came up twice, let's use that as an example going forward as we talk about the ABCs here. Okay, I'm going to close us out of this. move us back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So the ABCs of plan making is based on a bunch of research about how do we make the best possible plan to complete our goals in a way that we're not going to procrastinate, we're not going to miss deadlines, we're actually going to get it done. But really, the foundation of this, like why do we need this system, is that people, including our students, but all of us, are poor planners. Like human beings are just, in a general sense, not wired to think about the long-term future. We like the here and now. And just to give you an example of this from one study, these researchers asked all of the seniors in their psychology courses who were doing a thesis to predict, starting in the spring, how long do you think it's going to take you to finish your senior thesis? Once, in the best case scenario, like everything goes according to plan, how long will it take you to finish? And then imagine the worst case scenario. Everything that could go wrong does go wrong. How long do you think it'll take you to finish that thesis? And so what these senior students predicted was that best case scenario, 27 days, they're going to finish that thesis. So under a month. Whereas in the worst possible scenario, it will take them an average of 49 days or 7 weeks to finish that thesis. So how long did it actually take them to finish their theses on average? 55 days. And that was just the average. So, you know, some people were doing far more than that. And so even when asked, these students were asked, think about the worst case scenario, everything goes wrong. They couldn't even properly predict and plan for how bad it was actually going to get. And this is the foundation of what we call in psychology the planning fallacy. When we're trying to estimate how long it's going to take us to do something, we systematically underestimate how long it will take us. We're always coming up short, finishing things late, rushing at the last minute. I'm sure you all have these moments in your lives that you can appreciate, and you see it with your students all the time. And the longer the task is, the more complex it is, the more steps it has, the worse this gets. So with any type of goal, one of the first things we want our students to do is to chunk it into its composite pieces or the steps along the way. A lot of the things you list as goals, financial aid, retake a class, register, come back, have a lot of steps to them. And those need to be spelled out in order to start this process of doing these ABCs. One of the big reasons why is chunking helps get rid of this planning fallacy. So this was a study that was done where undergraduates were brought to a laboratory and they were asked to do 3 things. Proofread a report with a bunch of typos in it, write a 2-page report, and they were given a phone book and asked to look up the names and phone numbers of 100 businesses. As you see, this study was published in 2008, so they did know back then what a phone book was. And then they were asked, how long do you think it'll take you to do all this stuff? But half of the students were just asked, how long will it take you to finish all 3 things? The other group were asked to estimate each task individually, so chunked it down, say, how long will it take you to proofread? How long will it take you to write? How long will it take you to use the phone book? And what they found was when people grouped the 3 tasks together, they thought it would take them about an hour. But when they did estimate the tasks individually and just added that up, it was an average of 77 minutes. And that was actually what the average time it ended up taking these students to finish all 3 tasks. So their predictions were much better when all the steps were laid out in front of them. And this is not only going to make people better estimators of their time, it's going to mean they finish things. And so this was a study that was done with college intending high school seniors in San Jose. The goal for all of them was to complete the FAFSA. Half of them were left to their own devices to do the FAFSA. The other half went through this process where they were directed to write down all of the steps that it's going to take to complete the FAFSA. Then they put sub-deadlines on each of those tasks to try to spread that work over the course of several weeks. And in this study, they actually also gave them an app that was sending them reminders about when to do all of these specific steps of the FAFSA based on whatever deadlines they themselves decided. And what they found was the students who did the chunking process were more likely to complete the FAFSA on the order of 15 percentage points. And they were far more likely, almost twice as likely, to actually end up receiving some sort of federal aid in the end. So this chunking process really had a profound impact on them being able to successfully navigate the complexities of financial aid. And so I said, for our example, we're going to talk about registration. A few of you said goal for the summer is to get registered. So I'm going to turn this back to VVOX to ask, okay, if the goal is to get registered, what are the steps? What are the steps a student needs to do at your institution to get registered? So let me put that up on the VVOX so you can actually answer it. And, you know, obviously there'll be multiple steps. You can answer this question multiple times to list all the steps. If you need to put in the ID again, it is on screen, but yes, meet with advisor. I know for some institutions, I know that is compulsory. For others, it is just a really good idea. Doing some sort of test. What are other steps students have to go through in order to actually be able to register for classes? Yep, find the course catalog, figure out kind of in a sense like what they think they want to take. I see orientation. Thinking about their schedule, that's great. I know Janine gave an example about dealing with work schedules and those being in flux. I see figuring out what classes are actually open, submitting a high school diploma. Paying off bills. Yeah, so yeah, there are a bunch of steps, clearing holds. And so now I'm really going to dive into some of the meat of this ABCs of plan making that we've been teasing for the last 27 minutes. But we know that when we're trying to make these plans, we can really apply this to all of these very specific, concrete steps as far as a plan to make sure students meet with their advisor, a plan to make sure students complete their assessment tests, and so on and so forth. So this is what the ABCs of plan making stands for. It stands for aspirations. It's really identifying what your goals are. Benefits, identifying what positive outcomes will happen if you complete this goal. And then really kind of the nuts and bolts of coming up with a plan. What are the challenges you're going to face? Janine mentioned that. Coming up with contingency plans for those challenges and making those contingency plans really specific. And so in the interest of time, since I have about another 10 minutes to go, we're just going to focus on these last 3 steps. And to introduce this, kind of one way in which this planning can work out, we have a special guest speaker coming to us via a video. Just make sure the sound is on.
Let me tell you something. This is important. This is like the whole secret of life. No matter what you're doing, you've got to make a plan.
He loves to make plans.
Let me give you an example. Say you're making a BLT, you get a plate. Now that's an easy step to skip. And some people will say, no, start heating up the bacon. I say, if you're gonna finish with a plate, for Pete's sake, that's where you start.
One time we suggested going to a movie without a plan. It didn't go great.
Launching an initiative to modernize and expand access to public transportation, plan it out. Start mopping the kitchen floor without a plan, I'll tell you what, you could end up stuck in the corner for 10, 15, 20 minutes, surrounded by nothing but a wet floor and memories of your own mistakes.
Do you know how many different kinds of ice cream bars they have at movie theaters now? I didn't either. I didn't have a plan.
So when it comes time to do my sacred duty as an American citizen and vote, you better believe I've got a plan. All right, you guys, step 1 is we got to find out where we're going to vote. Status report.
Woodward Elementary.
Library or gym?
Gym, sir.
Good, gives me a lot more room to maneuver. And step two, how are you gonna get me there?
Amtrak to Wilmington, 4:55.
Actually, let's do the 9:17. I want to make it back to the White House so I can show Barack I voted and I have my sticker on. He's gonna be so jealous. Eddie, what's the final step?
Sir,
Eddie,
make sure everyone around you has plans to vote too.
should have made a plan.
So clearly that video is from a little while ago. It was produced for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. But that a lot of what President Biden talked about in that video is based on the research that goes into these ABCs that I'm going to share with you. It was something that there are studies that came out, and I'll show you one of them, that the Democratic Party in particular really embraced as far as using this kind of stuff to increase voter turnout. So one of the big steps in this ABCs is identifying challenges. What are the obstacles like you might face or your students might face in completing a goal? And it's not necessarily that you need to identify every challenge that could possibly happen, because one, that's impossible. And two, if it were possible, it would leave you completely paralyzed by seeing all of these obstacles in front of you. But really, it's about coming up with like, what are the 2 to 3 most likely challenges, or the challenges that are going to have the biggest impact on completing this goal. And that's what we're going to try to plan around there. So going back to VVOX, we're talking about getting registered for classes. So what are the challenges you would expect students are going to face getting registered? Okay, there's a challenge. They owe money. Financial, okay. Financial, okay. we're finding a theme here. Financial. Time for work and family. Financial is getting big in our word cloud. Academic appeals are a challenge. Just all the summer distractions. Family commitments, yep.
And Ross, I just wanted to mention a comment from Dermot about character limits, I think, in VVOX. So I think VVOX does have some character limits in terms of how long your response can be to these questions. So apologies, didn't catch your question earlier, but please feel free if you want to share a longer answer to use the chat function. Unfortunately, that is one of the limits of VVOX, as they do have some character limits.
Thank you for pointing that out, Serena. Yeah, so looks like we have some clear winners here. As financial and work schedules are going to be some of the biggest challenges students face. All right. So once you've identified the biggest challenges to completing the goal, you can move into contingencies. The idea here is to help students come up with a plan for what are they going to do when that challenge comes up to get themselves back on track. And this often takes the form of an if-then, like if I get called into work at an unexpected time when I was going to do those registration steps, then what am I going to do? Am I going to get up early the next day to get back on track? You know, am I going to do it on the weekend? Like, what's the plan? And so just to show you a study that used this was with 66 high school sophomores who all wanted to study for the PSATs over the summer. But half of them were just given a prep book and said, go forth and study. The other half were asked to come up with what are the challenges you're going to face this summer? What are those summer distractions? And then come up with the plan for if that happens, what are you going to do next to get back to your PSAT prep? And what they found was this was really helpful. The control group only did 84 problems over the summer. The group that did this planning process almost doubled that. And when you're making these contingency plans, making them more detailed and more specific can be really helpful. So this was a study that was done at a large corporation where in the fall, they bring a flu vaccine clinic right to the lobby of the office. And normally they would send their employees a postcard reminding them of the dates and times of the flu vaccine clinic, just like you see on the left side of your screen. But in this study, only a third of employees got that postcard. A third got the one in the middle that's asked, what day, month, and day are you going to go? And the final third got the one on the right, which also added this box for the specific time you're going to get a flu vaccine. Now, keep in mind that they don't know if anyone actually wrote anything on these. They weren't turned in. There was no public commitment. It wasn't a sign up. It was just a way to prompt people to think about when exactly are you going to do this, go get your flu vaccine. And being more specific helps. So the reminders only got about a third of people to get a flu vaccine. But when they were prompted to think about the date they would go, it significantly increased up to 35.5%, and then up over 37% if they also thought about day and time. And so usually when we're thinking about these contingency plans or if-then plans, like the number one thing is time. If a distraction comes up, at what time am I going to go accomplish my goal? When am I going to do this? But there are lots of other specifics we can look at. So this study, which is kind of the big study that inspired the Joe Biden video I showed you earlier, was about helping people make plans to vote. The study was done in 2008 during the presidential primary between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And it was done in Pennsylvania with over 287,000 registered Democrats. And so one group of Democrats were just a control group where they just looked at how many people voted. The second group got a robocall reminding them to vote and telling them where to go vote, where their precinct is. The third and final group got a robocall to give them a reminder, tell them where to go, and ask them 3 questions. What time will you vote? So there's that time component again. Where will you be coming from? And what will you be doing beforehand? And the point of this is to try to create extra triggers in memory to say, oh, we want people to go vote. If we ask them to connect voting to where are you coming from, what will you be doing beforehand, then when, say, they get their morning Starbucks coffee and they're walking out of Starbucks, they remember, right, I said I was going to go vote now and not go straight to work. So that's the basic idea here. And again, keep in mind, this was a robocall, so nobody really answered these questions at all. There was, again, no like public commitment being made. It was just trying to get people to think about the answers to these questions in their head. And again, as you might predict from me showing you the study, it worked. Just reminding people to go vote had 0 impact on voter turnout. But asking them to think about this plan for voting increased turnout by 2 percentage points, which when you're talking on the scale of hundreds of thousands, millions of potential voters, can be a huge swing in who could potentially win an election. And that's a big reason why the Democratic Party was using ideas like this to try to engage Democratic voters to turn out for them. And so there's a lot of different specifics that can be put to these types of plans that students are thinking about for completing their summer goals. Again, there's the when, which can be a specific day and time or something related to some other triggering event. Where some of these tasks can only happen in one place, perhaps, maybe like an assessment test has to be done on campus, but a lot of times you have options. And so thinking about, where's the best place to accomplish our goals? Is it our bedroom? Is it a coffee house? Is it the library? So on and so forth. Who will you be with? Some goals may require another human being to accomplish, but a lot of students benefit from finding an accountability buddy or someone to try to help with their goals to receive help with their own goals in return. And of course, planning what you need. A lot of things, especially when we were doing this stuff during the height of the pandemic, you need internet, you need a laptop, you need all of this technology. Maybe you just need a snack to make sure your blood sugar doesn't drop while you're accomplishing your goal. And thinking about those things beforehand can be extremely helpful.
Great. And so before we jump into our breakout group, and Ross, thank you for walking us through some of those examples and some strategies for how we could use chunking interactions with students. Just wanted to see if we could answer any questions for you or go back and clarify anything before we move into some time to practice some of these strategies together. And so please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question before we move on. We're also going to have some time at the end for discussion, so you can save your question for then, but just wanted to see if there's any area we could go back and clarify before we move into our activity. To Gabriella, yes, we will be providing the slides and recording from this session. We're going to be sending you all a follow-up email afterwards. Great. So I think we can move into our practice. So we are going to be putting you into breakout groups to practice applying the ABCs with your breakout group. And so in your group, we ask that you pick one person to take notes and be a spokesperson for when we return to our larger group. And we would like you to pick a goal that students are working on this summer. So pick a goal that we haven't discussed, like registration, and then think through what chunks there are to accomplish this goal. I'd also like you to think through 2 to 3 big challenges that students may face accomplishing this goal. And so I'm going to give you about 15 minutes or so, Ross, 10 minutes. And then afterwards, and we'll send you a alert when we're going to be joining the larger group again. Would like to save some time for you to come back and talk about what you discussed with your partners before we wrap things up and leave some time for some additional questions that you may have for us. Great. I think
Okay,
Ross.
the breakout rooms are now open.
Great. Welcome back. Hey. Hope you had a good discussion with your group. We would love to hear from someone if someone would like to volunteer and talk about the goal that you picked and a challenge or two that you thought students might face accomplishing this goal.
I can go first. In my breakout room, I had Dana and Kelly with me, and that we decided the task for the students to focus on, the goal is completing all the summer classes they sign up. And some of the challenges may entail the following. The summer classes tend to be very fast-paced, and that students need to balance many obligations at home or at work. They also need to be able to resist the beautiful weather and the attempt or the desire to play hard in the summer. So the planning matters. We talk about how to chunk this task into multiple pieces. We talk about perhaps, encourage students to, take some time management workshops and managing the expectations. It's time to probably evaluate the academic plan to see, what fall may look like based on, how they do in the summer. We also want them to have a midterm check-in in the summer with the faculty and really, spell out the study plan, not only when, but also where and with whom to study.
Great.
Great, thank you, Kevin.
Great. Did anybody else want to share what your discussion was like?
I can go next. So I'm Cindy Gomes. I'm from Massasoit Community College, working in the Success Scholars Program, and I was in the group with Lisa and Martha from Northern Essex. And one of the things that we discussed is just, I guess having a concern around, okay, we've got these students and they go through the orientation process and they register for classes, and then it's like the next steps get kind of like lost in the shuffle, which is like meeting with your advisor. And like Janine had mentioned earlier on, our program is more of an opt-out model. So a lot of students don't know that they're in our program. So they're new to college and they're trying to figure out things. They may not be checking their email as often, or be connected where they would see their advisors' names or how to reach out to them. So one of the goals is just how do we increase more connection with students after they go through the orientation process and register, so that they are staying on track and have someone to connect with. The barriers is, obviously we're in that opt-out model where students then don't know that they're in our program and they're brand new to the college, so they may not be looking at emails or know that, this is your advisor and how to reach out. One of the ways that we can kind of, I guess, chunks or steps to kind of help mitigate that a bit is having more targeted outreach, where advisors can kind of chunk their caseload, where you can chunk your caseload as to, new incoming students, then, returning students, and kind of do a little bit more targeted outreach towards those new incoming students in various ways, not just, I always say, think outside the box, not just maybe through email, but finding out different ways that we can kind of increase that connection. And I think the biggest, one of the challenges that also face that is that for our program at Massasoit, we're working with mostly part-time students, and it's just, they live busy lives. They've got work, they've got families, they've got other obligations, and just kind of finding those different avenues to kind of connect with them. Even if you're not connecting with them physically or virtually, you're connecting via email or via phone. So that was pretty much what we discussed in a nutshell.
Thanks, Cindy. I think you really teed us up for the last point we wanted to share with you all, in terms of thinking through how you can chunk up, what you're communicating to students about completing their goals, accessing help resources when they need it. Chunking is something that we do a lot of on our platform. So helping students be intentional about how they are planning through completing the goals that they have for themselves. And so I just wanted to end on this example because we thought it just highlighted another way that you can, be intentional when you're talking to students about what their goals are. We participated in a project called the Nudges to the Finish Line, where the objective was to increase persistence and graduation rates for near completer students. And so we served over 2,500 students in a randomized control trial at 9 open access institutions, focusing on students who were at risk of dropping out. And so students received nudges that were focused on providing information on final requirements to graduate, connecting them to resources to set up to support them overcome challenges and setbacks when they have them in the process towards completing their degree. And so through this experiment, we found that helping students chunk their goals out, like you see in the nudge example on the screen, where we're asking the student to think through, when will you visit the math lab? What day do you want to visit the math lab? Can really help them to complete their goals. And so at one of the colleges, we were able to analyze swipe data to see how many students access tutoring in the control group and the treatment group. And so what we found are that students who received nudges from Persistence Plus had a measured 5 times uptick in terms of how much time they were spending in tutoring that semester compared to students who did not receive these nudges. And so just wanted to highlight again that this method of helping students chunk up or plan what they're going to do, how they're going to complete it, what will happen if they don't complete it, planning through obstacles that they most likely will encounter that will take them off track, can really be helpful in helping them develop these skills of planning how they want to follow through on the plans and the goals that they have for themselves. And so we know that it's almost noon. And so we wanted to wrap things up with thanking you all today for attending our session. Thank you to Lutful for organizing our session today. We also want to thank our partners, Janine and Kevin from Quinsigamond Community College, for introducing us to this group and providing us with the opportunity to present to you all today. We are going to be sending an email that includes these slides and a recording. We would also love it if you could help us out by completing a feedback survey about our session today. If you have your phone, you can feel free to scan the QR code on your screen, click on the link that I just shared. We'll also be sending the link in our follow-up email if you aren't able to complete it today. And as a thank you for your time, you will receive a $5 gift card if you do complete the survey for us. And so we also have our contact information up on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to us if you do have any questions or you want to talk about some ways to incorporate behavioral science into the work that you do. But thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of the day. And it was really great chatting with you all this morning.